Hey class, this is Mr. Ziegler here today. Sorry I couldn't be there with you today, but I'm going to help you kind of review the nitrogen cycle and get ready for the test today. So please make sure you're paying attention and using your time here to get ready for the test because the test is still happening today. So here's what we'll start with. So lesson 1.4, I pulled this up on Canvas here as you can see. We started doing this on Monday, and then Tuesday when I was gone, you were supposed to finish this. And I added these questions. I wanted you to answer these questions as you were going through this reading. So what I want you to do right now, if you haven't yet, I want you to get that packet out, that lesson 1.4, get that packet out. And then you should have picked out this worksheet over here that I have on, well, it's to my left, it might be to your right, as you came into the class on the black cart. All right, let's get started here. All right, so first question, why is nitrogen important for living things? Make sure to copy lines from the reading to support your answer. So a big thing that we're going to be doing here on future tests and the performance task is to be using evidence from the text or from the reading that we have. So this one right here, exploring the nitrogen cycle, we need to find some lines that help us describe why nitrogen is important to living things. So first one right here, it says nitrogen is one of the primary macronutrients. So a couple big terms in there. Primary meaning like one of the most important, the first, okay, primary in front of, and then macronutrients. Remember we talked about macro, that prefix. Macro means a lot of, okay, so like a macromolecule is a lot of atoms. It means big, a lot of atoms bonded together to make a molecule. Here, macronutrients, and it defines what macronutrient is in the next part of the sentence here. It's a substance required in large quantities. Okay, so we need a lot of this. We need a lot of nitrogen. It's one of the front runners of substances that we need that is critical here, critical for our survival of all living organisms. And then the second sentence kind of repeats or adds on to some evidence for why nitrogen is important. It is a necessary component of many biomolecules. Remember, biomolecules is another term for macromolecules. So it's a component of many biomolecules, including proteins and nucleic acids. All right, so that's including DNA here. So to make DNA or proteins, which makes up a large portion of our body, we need nitrogen. All right, question 2, what causes nitrogen fixation? All right, so this is where, depending on which class you're in, this is kind of where we left off. All right, so nitrogen fixation is bolded word in paragraph 2. All right, what causes nitrogen fixation? And if you remember when we read this, some big ideas from this reading so far, paragraph 1 and 2, nitrogen is important. Okay, it's all around us in the atmosphere. Remember, it makes up like 80% of our atmosphere, but it's hard to get. We can't just use it from our atmosphere. We need to change it from this dinitrogen gas, this N2, into something that's usable. All right, and 2 forms in which it's usable is ammonium and nitrates. Okay, so let me pop to this next page here, paragraph 3. It talks about how it's super stable and it's hard to break it down. And it says here, some nitrogen-fixing organisms are free-living, while others actually live in the tissues of plants. Okay, so the plant itself cannot fix nitrogen or go through nitrogen fixation, but some organisms that live in plants. All right, so what could that be? Free living bacteria and fungi, so decomposers. So for question 2, we're looking for decomposers. That's one of the 4 ways that we can fix nitrogen. Let's see if they give us some more ways to do it. Let me pop down to paragraph 4 here. Some bacteria found in tissue of a host plant are called symbiotic nitrogen fixers. And we're going to talk about symbiotic relationships at a different time. All right, but we have bacteria that live in plants here. A symbiotic relationship is one that requires a close association with a host and benefits both organisms. So the plant is the host and the bacteria are living in the plant. All right, so the bacteria that are living in the plant, they can also fix nitrogen, and it goes more in depth here. All right, most symbiotic associations are very specific and have complex mechanisms that help maintain the symbiosis. That doesn't really help us with anything yet. In particular, legume plants, which are peas, clovers, soybeans, are often known to have symbiotic nitrogen-fixing bacteria. So those plants especially have this nitrogen fixing bacteria. Other plants have it too, but not all plants have it. Okay, so we got two living things. Whoops, here we go. Two living things that can help us get nitrogen from the atmosphere and change it into a usable form, or we say fix nitrogen or go through nitrogen fixation. We have decomposers, which could be bacteria, but also fungi and other things. And then also some bacteria that live on plants or in plants. All right, so that's two. All right, there are two more. There's a total of four. Okay, down here in paragraph 5. Although most nitrogen fixation is carried out by biological processes of bacteria, those are the things we already talked about, decomposition and nitrogen fixation with the bacteria that live in the plant. All right, some nitrogen can be fixed abiotically. That means non-living processes. So one of them is lightning. All right, lightning produces nitrates, and certain industrial processes, including the combustion of fossil fuels, produce ammonium. So two non-living things. We have lightning. When lightning strikes, that can fix nitrogen, and also two industrial processes. So the industry, when they burn fossil fuels, they can also fix nitrogen and make it into a usable form, produce ammonium. All right, so that's question 2. Question 3, how do animals, and they don't specifically use the term animals here in the handout. They talk about herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores, but those will all be animals. How do they get nitrogen? All right. Right here, I see the word herbivore. So once nitrogen is in a usable form, plants utilize the nutrient to make proteins and nucleic acids. Okay, so if lightning strikes, if we have an industrial process like combustion, or if we have a decomposer, or if we have bacteria living in a plant, fix nitrogen, it can become in a usable form in the soil. And then plants can absorb that, and they're going to make some nucleic acids and proteins, which are macromolecules important for all living things. Herbivores, those are animals that eat plants. Omnivores are animals that eat plants or other animals. They acquire nitrogen through consuming plants, okay? So if you eat a plant, then you can take the nitrogen from that plant and assimilate it into your body. Remember, we used, here it is, assimilation in the carbon cycle as well. So in the nitrogen cycle, we can also go through assimilation by taking that nitrogen from a plant and then assimilating it or making it part of our body. Here, omnivores and carnivores. Okay, so remember, an omnivore could eat a plant or another animal. Carnivores just eat other animals. They get it by consuming other organisms. All right, and that organism or the organism before that had to eat a plant. So it starts in the plants that get it from the soil, and they get it from the soil with one of the four processes: decomposers, bacteria living on plants, lightning, or industrial processes. Plants absorb it, an animal eats that and assimilates it into their body, and then another animal can eat it and take that nitrogen away and assimilate it into their body. And then another animal could eat it until eventually an animal is going to die, all right, and then maybe get decomposed, and then that nitrogen can be put back into the soil for a new plant to uptake. And so we get this cycle. We get this cycle of nitrogen. Now, this last part here, this is part 4. What is denitrification? Denitrification is the process that converts nitrate to nitrogen gas, thus removing biologically usable nitrogen and returning it to the atmosphere. So once we fix nitrogen, it doesn't necessarily always stay nitrogen. If it doesn't get used, it eventually can be broken down and returned to the atmosphere through the denitrification process. And they don't talk a whole lot about how this happens, all right? But just the main thing that you need to know is that it can happen, is that denitrification, what is it? It's when usable nitrogen gets put back into the atmosphere, which is then unusable for living things. And that you should know what it is, and you should know that it happens and makes the nitrogen unusable. All right, so now after you've done these questions, now you should have completed this on Tuesday. If you didn't, you can use this video to complete and submit, all right, this lesson 1.4, but this was a good review for those of you who already completed it. And what we're going to do with this picture over here is I want you to add the 4 ways that we fix nitrogen. All right. And as you read through this packet, any other process that you could add in here, and you can add your own picture or your own drawing into parts of this if you feel like it's missing something. All right. So I'm going to give you a few minutes here. All right. And for the substitute, please pause this video so students have a few minutes. Give them about 5 minutes here to add the 4 processes here of how we fix nitrogen, and then any other process you can find within the reading to draw it on this picture, and then I'll review it here in just a few minutes. So please pause the video. All right, and we're back. All right, I'm looking for my pen here. I can draw on the screen. Here we go. Found it now. Let's see. Can I get rid of this? Oh, I don't see my video anymore. Let's see if I can get it back on. Well, I don't see it, so we might just have to do this without the video. Okay, does this work now? Can I write on here? Good. Okay, 4 processes right here. We got lightning, so I'm going to write nitrogen fixation here, caused by lightning. Same with this industry, this factory back here. All right, when they combust fossil fuels, they can put nitrogen into a usable form. Oopsies, nitrogen fixation, which then can go into the soil and plants can use. These, tough to tell, but I'm guessing that those are legume plants. All right, they're going to have some nitrogen fixing bacteria living on them. So they're going to go through some nitrogen fixation. Okay, and then I don't see any decomposers. So I'm just going to draw a picture here of some dots for my decomposing bacteria. All right, and I'm going to write decomposers here because even though that's a great picture, I don't know if everybody would know what that is. All right, so they're going to be decomposing and putting nitrogen into the soil as well. Okay, other processes here that they mention in the reading, they do mention fertilizer. So maybe this farmer, he's going to put fertilizer. That looks like wheat field to me. And they mentioned in the reading that wheat especially, not very symbiotic with bacteria, and so they do not fix nitrogen for it. So typically it's a high fertilizer plant here, or a plant that needs a lot of fertilizer. So they're going to add fertilizer here. And fertilizer is mostly nitrogen because that is a limiting factor causing plants, usually the nutrient that plants run out of first because it's so hard to get. All right, so we put fertilizer there. Then we see this rain here. We get some runoff. So some of that nitrogen can go into the lake, and then that nitrogen can be used by the animals and plants in the lake, including one thing they mentioned was algae. You get algal blooms where algae explodes. It grows extremely quickly and reproduces very quickly because it gets that extra nitrogen. We have assimilation. in which that little bunny rabbit there eats some plant and takes some of the nitrogen or assimilates the nitrogen from that plant into its own body. And then maybe that bunny dies and decomposes here and puts it back into the soil for another plant to take here. All right, so I got my 4 processes here. 1, 2, 3, and 4 ways to fix nitrogen. And then the last thing I'm going to draw an arrow up here, and this is denitrification. Okay, denitrification, and we didn't talk a whole lot about how this happens. We just have to know that some of this nitrogen that gets fixed and gets put into the soil, eventually it goes back into the atmosphere if it's not used. And so we get this cycle and we get this process of how nitrogen can move throughout our environment. All right, excellent. So that's kind of a review of what we've done the last couple days. All right, now I'm going to spend time doing some review questions to get you ready for the test. So there are nitrogen cycle questions on the test. However, it's going to focus more, since we spent a lot more time on the water cycle and the carbon cycle. So let me get rid of this here. All right, actually, I don't need any of this. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pair up with the person you're sitting next to at your station. You can get a whiteboard out, and please grab a marker per student out of the green bin that should be sitting on the front table near the smartboard. So everyone should grab a marker, or we could have one student. This would be super helpful if one student could walk around and hand it all out. Okay, we'll do a little bit of review here. So you and the person you're sitting next to, you guys are going to be partners. You guys are going to be working together, but only one person can write and the other person can help if needed. So I'll give you about, you could pause this video, please. Pause this video to give students some time to get set up. All right, I'm assuming we're back here. All right, so here's how it'll work. I'll just go home here. You don't need to look at lesson 1.4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask some questions. We can pause the video to allow students to write their response down. And then I'll go through the correct answer here. In fact, maybe I'll write it up here. I'll go to a whiteboard app so we can see. I'll write it out so you can see it up here on the screen. Here we go. All right, here we go. Oh, get out of here. Get out of here. Okay. Let me just make sure that this works. Text. Okay, can I type something? All right, good. All right, so this first question, okay, between you and your partner, whoever's got longer hair, that's the person who's going to be writing first. Okay, the person with longer hair is going to write first. The person with shorter hair, you can help, but you cannot grab the marker for this first question. Okay, so first question here, you're going to have to put down one thing here. So I'm going to write an experiment up here, and you need to tell me the independent variable. So here's the experiment. All right, I want to test which type of shoe helps me run the mile the fastest. Okay, so that's my question here. So my experiment, I'm going to run the mile 5 times. Once with a tennis shoe, once with a flip-flop, once with a dress shoe, once with high heels, and once barefoot. Find the independent variable. All right. If you haven't paused the video here, I'm going to give the answer. If you need to give students more time, you can pause it here. Here's the independent variable. So remember, the independent variable is the variable that we are changing as a scientist, is the thing that we are choosing to change to see if it affects something else. So here, okay, which type of shoe helps me run the mile the fastest? The thing I'm changing in this experiment is my footwear here, or shoe type. Okay, that is what I'm changing. So the independent variable is the shoe type. If that's what you had, give you and your partner, you guys are a team, remember, you guys are a team, give you and your partner, your team, 1 point. All right, now the person with the shortest hair, you are next, okay, because you technically lost the challenge by having shorter hair. All right, you need to do two things. You need to find the dependent variable and find one constant, something that is going to remain the same. So I'll read this one more time so you can think about it, okay? So which type of shoe helps me run the mile the fastest? I'm going to run the mile 5 times, once with a tennis shoe, once with a flip-flop, once with a dress shoe, once in high heels, and once barefoot. All right, so what is the dependent variable? I'll add one more sentence here, okay? Each mile is timed by, I'll say, helper to determine which mile was the fastest. Okay, so what's the dependent variable? And then list one possible constant. There should be lots of constants, but just pick one. Okay, again, if you need to give students time to answer this, you can pause this video. But I'm going to go through the answer right now. So if you need to pause it, just to give you another moment, you can pause it. All right, here we go. All right, to find the dependent variable. Remember, the dependent variable is what we're measuring, okay? So when we walk away from this experiment, what data do we have? That's what we're measuring. So the dependent variable in this case is the time of the mile, how much time it takes me to run the mile. If you said something like speed of running the mile, or if you said how fast I ran the mile, all of those would be acceptable. Okay, how fast did I run the mile, how much time it took me to run the mile, or the speed in which I'm running the mile, all those would be correct. So if you had that, give yourself a point, your whole team. A constant, there are lots of constants. So one thing is shoe size. All right, if one shoe is a wheel baby shoe, okay, that's not going to fit me. That's going to affect the shoe size, is going to affect how well it fits on my foot and affects how far how fast I can run. If I have one that's way too big, if I'm running in clown shoes, okay, that's gonna make it difficult. I want all these shoes to be the same size. They should fit me the same way. We're going to see what type of shoe helps me run faster. So that's one. Possibly the clothing that I'm wearing, okay, or the outfit. If I'm wearing a parachute and I'm trying to run a mile, that's not going to be a fair trial. I want all the trials to be the same. Possibly the weather. I don't want to be running this mile in a snowstorm versus a warm summer day. That's going to affect my time. You could say something about the track. Okay, so I don't want to run 1 mile uphill and 1 downhill. That's going to affect it. You could say the length. Okay, I'm running 1 mile for each one. I'm not going to run a half a mile for one of them and just multiply my time by 2. I'm not going to do that. Everything has to be the same here, except for the type of shoe and the time in which I'm running the mile. So if you got those 2 things correct, remember you only needed one of these constants. I just gave you a bunch of them. Give yourself 2 points. Okay, so your whole team could be up to 3 points at this time. All right, now between you and your partner, who gets to answer the first question, is the person who lives closest to school. So you got to figure out who lives closer to school. That person gets the marker first. All right, this second round, we're going to be talking about the water cycle. All right, so person who lives closest to the school, you get to answer this question. Question 1, name a process in the water cycle that does not cause the water to change phases. And when I say phases, that's solid, liquid, and gas. So name a process that does not cause the water to change from a solid to a liquid, or a solid to a gas, or a liquid to a gas, or a liquid to so on and so forth. So name a process that does not cause the water to change phases. All right, if you pause the video or if you didn't pause the video, I'm going to go through the answer here. So name a process that does not cause the water to change. There's a few possible answers here. You could say precipitation. Precipitation, now that could change. It could go from the water in the cloud. Remember, the cloud is tiny water droplets, and it could fall as snow. So, but it doesn't have to. It could fall as liquid. So it doesn't have to cause it to change, but it could possibly. All right, we also have surface runoff, which again could start as snow or ice and then melt into a liquid, but it doesn't have to. Okay, it could fall as rain and then it could run off into a body of water, a lake, a stream, a river, ocean, whatever, and it could stay a liquid. Let's see, do I have any others? Those would be the two possible answers here. So if you had precipitation or surface runoff, give yourself a point. All right, person who lives farther away from school. You have a different water cycle question. Here we go. Name a process in the water cycle that requires living things. Okay, name a process in the water cycle that requires living things. All right, I'm ready to go through the answer. So if you need to pause it here to give students more time, please do so. All right, name a process in the water cycle that requires living things. There's a few possible answers here. We have, you could say photosynthesis. That's part of carbon cycle and water cycle. Same with cellular respiration. We also have transpiration. Okay, transpiration is the evaporation of water from a plant leaf to the atmosphere, so that requires living things. Infiltration is a bit of a stretch. It could use a living thing. Oop, misspelled it here. Infiltration, so water could absorb it, all right, as the water is filtering through the earth, so it could be absorbed. So that'd be a bit of a stretch, but I think yeah, I think these are the big three right here. If you got this one, I'll give you a point this time. All right, but name a process in the water cycle that requires living things. Actually, I'll tell you what. These are a point. This one is a half a point. Okay, half a point. All right, so now between you and your partner, okay, next two questions are about the carbon cycle. About the carbon cycle. To determine which partner goes first, the person will say who's wearing the least amount of colors today. It's the person who gets the marker first. Here's the first question. Name a process in the carbon cycle that causes carbon to move into the atmosphere. Name a process in the carbon cycle that causes carbon to move into the atmosphere. Multiple answers for this one. I'll give you a little bit of time. All right, here we go. I'm ready to go through the answer. All right, so name a process in the carbon cycle that causes carbon to move into the atmosphere. Cellular respiration. Okay, remember that's humans or any animal here. When we intake carbon through our food, we're going to breathe out carbon dioxide, and that goes into the atmosphere. So that's moving it to the atmosphere. You could also say combustion. Okay, combustion. When we burn fossil fuels, that puts carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as well. All right, person wearing the most colors today. Here's the second question. Oh, don't forget to give yourself a point if you got that right. Okay, I'll say name a process in the carbon cycle that requires living things. Name a process in the carbon cycle that requires living things. Multiple answers here. All right, ready for the answer here. Okay, so a lot of things that we could put here. We could put cellular respiration. We could put photosynthesis. Plants move carbon from the atmosphere into themselves. They uptake or they intake carbon dioxide. All right, we have deposition, kind of a tricky one. That's if something dies. So I guess maybe it's not technically living at that point, but you need a living thing at some point to die. You can't die if you were never living. All right, so deposition, when something dies and decomposes, they can deposit their carbon into the soil. Whoopsies. Sedimentation, so we have creatures that have shells made of carbon, and then when they die, it gets broken down into tiny pieces like sand at the bottom of the ocean, and eventually, after millions of years, it can become limestone, it can become rock, but you needed living things with those shells to begin there. Assimilation is the consumption. You're going to eat something. All right, let's see, can I move this here? You got to eat something and you're going to assimilate that carbon into your body. So that's another process in the carbon cycle. Sorry about that pause, but I think I got all of the processes here in the carbon cycle. So if you had one of those, give yourself a point. All right, so hopefully this was a good review. All right, so we are going to start the quiz here. Now, the quiz, I had some technical difficulties in my earlier classes about accessing it on Canvas. So it shows up for me when I click on this. All right, but for students, apparently it was not showing up. So this should have been sent to your email. So check your email to make sure that you got the link for this quiz. If you did not get the link, email me and I will email it to you. Oh, it's not working for me either right now. All right, so I'll make sure that I send it out in an email to you. And then at the end of the quiz, you need to take a picture of your score. I'll go to student view here. Take a picture of your score and you need to submit it down here. Okay, to take a picture of your score, remember to screenshot, which is Control, and then your Windows button, which is a rectangle with 2 lines after it. On my Chromebook, it's right above the 6, so it should be in about the same spot. But you need to screenshot your answer and upload it here to Canvas to submit your score. 14 possible points, 14 questions, all multiple choice. That's the quiz. And then as soon as you complete the quiz, let me leave the student view here. After you get your score, you can start on your quiz corrections. So for your quiz corrections, let me just give you a little bit of a preview of this. So if you get anything lower than an 85%, which I think is anything lower than a 12 out of 14, you can get a full point back for all of your corrections as long as you correct it correctly. So let me go through those instructions quickly here. Tell me which question number. Tell me what your wrong answer was, and don't just give me A, B, C, or D, because that could be different for every student. So write out the wrong answer, whatever it is. You can literally copy and paste it from the quiz. Give me the new correct answer. Okay, again, not just the letter. Give me a complete answer, whatever it says on the option. And then you need to give me an explanation to get your full point back. So you can explain why the new answer is correct. Okay, so why is this new one correct? What about it makes it correct? Or you can explain why the old answer is incorrect. So you may know now that this wrong answer doesn't make sense. Okay, tell me why. Give me an explanation. Do not give me, I misread the question. Okay, that doesn't tell me that you learned anything. Show me what you've learned. Show me why. Show me that you know why the new answer is correct or why the old answer is incorrect. If you do that for each question, you can boost your score up to an 85%, which would be a B. All right. If you score higher than a B, you can still get some points by doing corrections. So everyone should do corrections right after you complete the quiz. All right. If you have any questions, you can contact me through email. I'll try to get back to you today before the end of the day, but I cannot guarantee that as I am home with a sick 2-year-old. So there might be I might be pretty busy today. Okay, so that's the plan for the rest of the day. If you get your quiz corrections done, or if you score 100% on the quiz, you can go to grades. Let me go to student view again. Come on, internet, you can do it. There we go. You can go to grades and take a look at the grades. Anything that is missing that you have not turned in is labeled as missing. You may have turned something in, but it was the incorrect assignment, or you did the assignment incorrectly, and I may have given you a score of 0 out of 5 or 0 out of 10. It won't show up as missing, but it'll show your score. So if you got a 0 out of on anything, click on that assignment, and you should be able to see view feedback here. You can click on the assignment. It doesn't show it for me because I didn't leave any feedback for this fake student, but you can click on view feedback and you can see what comment did I leave? What did I do on your assignment? Or what do you have to do to return it in and earn points back? So good luck on the quiz. You have the rest of the time to get the quiz done, work on corrections, and check your grades.